So Horizon 5 is finally out, and over the last couple days I've been having a really good time at least trying to play it. And I say trying because if you tuned in, you'll see that the steering wheel that I was using was having some issues, and I'm not the only one. There's lots of people out there that are experiencing a lot of loss of control while using at least the Logitech G series steering wheel. So today we're going to be using the G29. I'm going to show you the settings that work best for me. Now I know there's probably tons of these videos out there, but the way I see it is the more people that can create these type of videos and the more changes in settings that we can see, the better off somebody can dial their stuff in so they can actually enjoy the game. So we're gonna go through the different types of settings, not only in the game itself, but we're also going to cover some of the changes that I made in the Logitech G Hub software. These settings just aren't restricted to the G29. They will work for the G29, G27, and the G923. You could probably even take some of these settings over into your Thrustmaster series steering wheels and see how they perform. But there's definitely some key things in here that I'm gonna point out while we go through this that I think ultimately made the difference and made the game more enjoyable. So we're gonna hop on over to the computer. We're gonna first look at the settings within the game, and then of course take a look at the G Hub and show you the settings that work best for me. So to get started, you're gonna want to boot your game up all the way. You don't wanna access the settings from the main menu because some of the settings don't actually show up until you fully load the world. So get it to where you're at least in this screen, you're driving around, whatever, go into your settings. And the first ones that we're gonna start with are under the difficulty tab. Now there's only two in here that I made adjustments to, but I think they were the ones that made the largest improvement over the control. First one, steering. This is an arcadey style game, not necessarily a simulation. Setting your steering to a standard instead of simulation seemed to allow me to correct the vehicle quite a bit better. So I know there's some of you guys out there that like simulation, but in this game, you're gonna want to change that to standard in order to maintain better control. Stability control itself is the other one. I turn this from off to on. As much as I don't like to have some of these settings on right now, at least until they fix some of the issues with the wheels, having stability control definitely made a big impact as far as control of the vehicle too. So I would recommend changing stability control to on and then steering to standard and then save those settings. The next section is of course going to be under advanced controls. We're going to blow through these pretty quickly because most of these I set as default or left them as default. There's just a few of them that I made some minor changes to, and I'm going to try to explain them the best that I can, at least the way that I understand them. If that doesn't work for you, you may have to just kind of Google the setting and see if there's a better description. So vibration, basically all of the top ones all the way down to steering linearity are all default. I think I said that correctly. Are all default. Leave those alone. There's no reason to change those. But I did change the steering one here to 55. This one is basically saying lower values provide more accuracy near the center, while higher ones are near full lock. Basically, the higher the number, the less sensitive it is going to be with kind of like micro adjustments, micro left and right movements. The smaller the number is, you're going to have, of course, the opposite of that, which is going to be more sensitive. So if you have it set to like 30, if you go around a corner and you barely just make a left-hand movement, there's a chance that the car might dart off an edge or something along those lines. So I thought out of the box, it needed a little bit of adjustment, and I moved this to 58 at one point, and then I've actually dialed it back to 55, which seems to be the sweet spot for me. So you'll want to make changes to that. Acceleration and deceleration. Acceleration and deacceleration. Acceleration and deceleration dead zones, I left those as is. Those are all default. Clutch I did move because I tend to rest my foot kind of near the clutch, but not necessarily on it enough to activate it. If you rest your foot on the clutch, if you have the clutch, you may want to move this up if it's detecting some clutch input. And then of course I moved the dead zone outside to 100 just so I can have full range. E-brake I left the same the way it is. Now the next one is vibration scale. This one is going to be the intensity of the vibration within your unit. Not necessarily the force feedback, but it's going to be like your rumble packs, things like that. You can adjust this if you think it's not enough or it's too intense. You can dial this as you need to. This isn't going to necessarily help the control of the car, aside from kind of like a feeling aspect, if that makes sense. So I've dialed that down to a 0.4 from a 0.5. Force feedback scale. This one, however, does change the strength of your force feedback. Out of the box, I thought it was probably a little lackluster, so I went ahead and bumped that from a 1 to a 1.2 to give me a little bit more force feedback, like making it a little bit more aggressive. Center spring, wheel, and mechanical scales. I bumped all of these to 2. Center spring is basically how strong your wheel rebounds back to center from obviously a left or right movement. I thought out of the box it was pretty weak, so I went ahead and cranked it all the way up. That seems to work really well. The wheel damper, this sets the resistance to the movement of your steering wheel. So basically your wheel moving left or right, I thought was a little lacking. So again, I bumped that all the way to a 2, and that seems to make the wheels respond a lot faster than they did before. Mechanical trail scale, this is basically, if you read the description, this sets the mechanical trail aligning torque, which balances the mechanical contribution to the force feedback on your steering wheel. Because you're trying to get a lot of this feeling through the wheel itself, the mechanical is kind of like how the back end or the mechanical aspects of your car spit out during like turns and things like that. If I'm understanding that correctly, if not, please correct me down in the comments, because some of this stuff I'm definitely new to as well. But I went ahead and bumped that to a 2, and that seemed to make the overall mechanical or physical or physics of the vehicle perform the way that I think it should. Force feedback, minimum force, and force feedback load sensitivity are 2 different settings, but they do kind of like the same action, or they have something to do with the same action. Force feedback minimum force is the minimum force that's required for force feedback to kick in. And then, of course, the load sensitivity is how sensitive the force feedback is to the changes within the load of the game. So I went ahead and bumped those from a 1 to a 0.8, and then the sensitivity from a 1 to a 0.9. Road feel scale and off-road feel scale. These are the overall feeling of the surfaces in your wheel, because you're trying to get all of your feeling through the wheel, like I was saying. The pavement out of the box, what I think was probably a little too strong, so I went ahead and dropped that down to a 0.7. That seemed to kind of straighten things out and give it a more natural feel. Off-road feel, I went down all the way to a 0.4. This is one that I'm still trying to make tweaks to. Aside from using user error, I'm still having some spin-out issues in off-road, but I think that might be just the vehicles themselves and learning the tuning aspects of those cars. But I went ahead and set it as a 0.4. That seems to be an okay middle ground for now, but I may end up making some final tweaks after that. And then, of course, steering sensitive is how sensitive the steering is kind of like on a global scale. So those are all of the changes that I've made in the game. I've gone from spinning out to at least being able to control the vehicle quite well. So I think these are where they're going to stay. I might make some final tweaks depending on the hotfix that's coming out on these wheels. There might be some changes. And if it's significant enough, then I'll make another video on the changes that I did make. Now, not only did I make changes in here, I made some changes in the G-Hub software. If you have Thrustmaster, you may have some Thrustmaster software. I basically took the steering wheel from a 900-degree rotation to a 360-degree rotation, because I noticed when I had it at 900, once I got past a certain physical turning point of the wheel, the game didn't register it anyway. So it's almost as if that extra degree of movement didn't matter. And then once I moved it to 360, I was getting the full range. And for some reason, my G29 is saying connected, even though it's connected. Well, that's your typical Logitech G-Hub software. Anyway, so the only setting that I did make within the G29 software within G-Hub, turning it to a 360-degree rotation instead of a 900-degree rotation. And then I believe I left the default of kind of like the load spring to 50, or the steering sensitivity within the software here to 50, and that seemed to help out quite a bit. So there you have it. These are the settings that worked best for me. Of course, take them as you need to and make the tweaks as you need to make them work for you. I will say, however, the 2 things that I think you should take away from this video, or the 2 settings, are the stability control. Make sure that is turned on. And then, because this is a arcadey style game, not necessarily a simulation, turning your steering type from simulation, over to the standard, I think will significantly help the control over your vehicle. So that is gonna wrap it up for this video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I know it's slightly different from the type of content that I usually create, but if you guys did get something out of it, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We wanna grow our YouTube channel. That definitely helps out the algorithm. And then if there are some tweaks that need to be made with this week's hotfix, then I will be sure to post those up and see if we can fine tune this even more. But that being said, that's gonna wrap it up, and we will see you guys on the next one. Peace. Happy racing.